Sonic Boom Episode 36, Robot Employees. We start out with Eggman asking for a chili dog from Dave so he can make it his thing. But just because of a really unclear thing Dave said, he immediately changes his mind and wants revenge. I guess Dave got his order wrong. And then he tells someone with a mustache that they're responsible for more evil than he ever dreamed of. You know, it really is a missed opportunity that Eggman didn't even get to try to eat a chili dog in the Sonic franchise. What were they thinking? Then he tells that guy they could use robot employees for Medburger, who would give people what they actually ordered. He didn't need to say that he's very suggestible. That was a good idea. Although trusting Eggman is a disaster waiting to happen. How does he know his robots won't turn on the heroes? Well, then they'd end up dismantled, and thus make it pointless that he told him to make those robots. But still, couldn't he just make Tails make the robots? I guess he could just send Orbot and Cubot to reprogram them to his favor afterwards. Anyways. But if he had told Tails to make the robots, it would have at least tried to make him look smart. Dave wants to prove he's better than a bunch of robots, so he uses a public challenge to challenge the robot, and after Sora the Eagle lampshades that it's a slow news day, the robot uses multiple arms to flip way too many burger patties. Then Dave tries to mop for a while, and all of a sudden he's covered with paint that wasn't on the floor. But the robot does it all faster. Dave then immediately gets beaten by the final competition when he's expected to say what the order was. But it was clearly rigged because the order was mumbled. And yet nobody objects to this. Although Dave is bad at getting orders right, so he's getting what he deserves. I guess that's why no one objected. So he plans to crash the party later with the Lightning Bolt Society. So there's some exciting tension created as the audience looks forward to what they're gonna do. His complaining got me thinking that it was kind of tragic they got fired from a decent legal job, because that's the only thing keeping him from being a criminal full-time. Sadly, the Lightning Bolt Society just joins in on the party like normal people, without the normal people all going after them in an angry mob. That's weird. Only in this show would they waste the potential of a villainous team plotting something. Eggman then says that because he still has a grudge against Medburger, he's going to exact his revenge. So he covers it with a force field, and Sonic can't break them out. You know, this is the restaurant that Sonic always goes to. You'd think that he wouldn't need an excuse to do this to Medburger. You'd think he would have done this the minute he knew that Sonic had a favorite restaurant. I mean, there was one time when he blew up the Medburger. But Amy just rebuilt it anyways, so I guess he thinks it would be a waste of time. But it wouldn't be, because it would be forcing Amy to waste time rebuilding it over and over. So that would be worth it. Then Knuckles reveals that he can't dig past the force field. Then there's no excuse for Tails not imitating this technology to protect the town from now on. If Eggman can make the force field go underneath, then why can't Tails? The robots get stuff on their faces to blind them, and Sonic attacks them. Styx gets called by Tails, and she says that she doesn't have an answering machine because she hates machines. And I was surprised that Tails didn't lampshade that a telephone is a machine, let alone lampshade that she's still friends with him. She goes to Tails' lab to get a bunch of stuff for him, like a welding laser. Eggman reveals that he's going to launch Medburger into outer space with the rest of his enemies. It's always good that the show keeps making specific members of Sonic's team necessary to save the day, because it would be really terrible if you could have had the entire show without one of them in the team just fine, without any of them getting into perilous situations they wouldn't have survived. Instead, even Styx is necessary. Tails tells Styx what to do, and because she needs someone to fly something, she goes to team up with Dave because they both hate the robots. So a mere fast food employee flies the biplane, which I'm sure would be a lot harder to fly than that. It was nice to hear Eggman being so happy when he said that he doesn't have to wait in lines anymore, when he was holding some jeans. Tails tells Styx to disarm some of the thrusters so she can slow down their descent. So she throws a boomerang to save the day, as I wonder why Eggman can't get away with anything in this show. Not even stealing the jeans in front of him. Then we see Eggman right below where Medburger used to be, and I was confused that he was dressed in an old-fashioned prison uniform. Dave tells Styx to find something that he somehow knows the exact appearance of. And she's told to press the big red button, which turns off the force field? Why would the force field have an off button? Tails did a lot of explaining that I couldn't type down. partially because of the lackluster audio quality making the dialogue unclear. I guess it makes sense that Eggman was below Madburger to gloat about how it's not there. But he could have sunbathed anywhere. Dave ends up getting his job back just because he saved the day. Unfortunately, Tails reveals that he salvaged one of the robots and reprogrammed it. So while I was just about to complain about the fact that Eggman's idea for improving the restaurant was completely put to waste, so he could never do anything good for humanity, it actually wasn't. Except for the fact that this show's terrified of changing the status quo in even one minor way. So I'm sure my complaint is going to be just as valid in the next episode, where we won't get to see the robot anymore. Well, I guess Eggman could have just destroyed it out of spite later, but Tails would just rebuild it. It also gets Eggman's order wrong giving him a salad, but I guess it was specifically programmed against Eggman to discourage his service. But if I don't see this robot again, this episode will still be more pointless than it should have been. Why is the show so against changing the status quo in a way that improves things? Why couldn't Eggman have permanently started using solar panels to give his base more power? I love the idea that for once Eggman carried out a genuinely good idea that improved society a little, by replacing an incompetent employee with competent robots. Although that would create a shortage of jobs in the market if it was applied on a large scale. So I'm really glad Tails salvaged one of those robots in the end. And that Six and Dave were able to save the day when Madburger was going to be launched into space with a force field that Tails had no reason to not be able to imitate and protect the town from now on. It was forced that Dave could pilot the plane though. While it was great that Six was needed to save the day, the fact that she hates machines despite being friends with Tails makes it confusing that she still has a telephone and nobody lampshaded on her. Even someone hating machines at all is forced because all someone would have to do is tell her about medical technology. How could anyone hate technology at that point? Although it was impressive that Eggman managed to get a personal private audience with the manager of Madburger or whatever. How'd he get past security? He must have threatened them all with his killer robots. He was lucky he even agreed to Eggman's idea, considering how obvious it was that he uses robots against people. So as usual, the whole plot was forced. Episode 36-2. Give Bees a Chance. It's written by Amy's voice actress? This should be interesting. The manager of Madburger mentions tax shelters, implying that he's corrupt too, and says that he uncovered a gem. And then Eggman's competent by stealing it with a crane from his Eggmobile. Sonic annoys me by immediately being here and challenging him, when he had no actual reason to be part of the crowd. Seriously, why do the heroes keep showing up to these crowds? Why do they care about what the mayor's gonna announce? I guess because they just assume Eggman's gonna show up, and he always does. He could have been at home playing video games at this point. And he ends up falling while holding the crystal, when Eggman very easily could have just flown away with the crystal and the crane and succeeded. Seriously, why couldn't Eggman have succeeded? This is what the show does to you. It makes you root for the villains because they become the underdog. He lands on the biplane, somehow not dying from smacking into the metal, after an overly long gag about how they all talk too much and just have to always have a quip. I never like lampshading. If the writer knows that they all quip too much, don't have them quip too much. Eggman finally lampshades that they're buzzkills, and the manager says that Eggman's after it, and so his insurance will shoot through the roof. And he talks as if insurance companies know about supervillains. But if supervillains are so common, then it's a wonder that none of the supervillains have taken over the world. Knuckles decides to watch it for him, and says that people have been complaining that he doesn't guard enough rare stones. I hate meta jokes. Taking this in-universe logic, no, there's no real way to explain this. I prefer to think that the Master Emerald has been, like, absorbed by him, and that's why he has his magical powers, like the shockwave generating attack. It would also be nice if the Master Emerald was shrunken down and hidden in his shoe. That's how I prefer to think of it for Game Knuckles. I don't understand why he said this in-universe. I guess by people he could be talking about his father. Like, he's not guarding the Master Emerald enough. But if there was a rare gem that he's expected to guard, it would have been stolen by now. Meta jokes just don't work. For no reason, Amy nurses a wounded Badnik back to health. Apparently, the only reason she was able to repair it was that it was still functioning in the battlefield. and her friends are somehow scared of it when she should have told them that she adopted it a long time ago. You'd think that Tails would have told them about it. I guess the robot Beatrice was reprogrammed by Tails to be on her side. It is sweet to see Amy have a pet Nice-Nick. I miss the Nice-Nick concept from Fleetway. At one point it's damaged, and then she gets repaired again. Tails is a great friend. Eggman's homing device and passcode doesn't work to get Beatrice on his side. He doesn't remember his password because it's obnoxious and he has to change it every 6 months. And somehow he's told by a person not working for him that he has to contact a customer care representative. But that's bullshit! It's his personal device for villainy! How would he be able to contact customer service? He's doing illegal things on a daily basis. Eventually, Eggman is able to cause Beatrice to fly into the wall of the tent and return to Eggman because an idiot lets him out of the tent. Wouldn't Tails have just programmed it to not be able to be affected by his signals? Seriously! What a moron! Wouldn't that be the first thing he'd do? I'm also expected to believe Gokubas are immune to guilt, when the whole reason Sonic could escape their village was that he won a guilt trip contest. So that's a continuity error. This is the first time I've ever felt sorry for Boom Amy. She's sniffling like a realistic person would. It's actually pretty sad how she spent a while being sat on the couch. It was also sad that her kitchen was all covered in burns and stuff, because she's not cooking like normal. And she cried because of her scrapbook. For once, her friends were acting like genuine friends. But then Eggman attacks and makes them run away before they could talk about their feelings like actual real people do. Because, yeah, communication is important. So why is this rare? Amy wants her friends not to attack the B-bots because one of them might be Beatrice. It's bullshit that she didn't do anything to disguise the robot, like paint it pink. But Eggman would have undone it anyways. But still, I expected it to be painted pink the minute that Tails got a hold of it. Sonic wants to get the gem back, and Amy says she can't be a part of this. Eggman improves his giant robot, and it starts shooting lasers at rocks. Sonic says he's never late. That just makes me wonder how they could ever be late when he has super speed. His friends really slow him down. He just has to always arrive with them. But that was a good idea because he needed Tails to catch him when he almost fell into the ocean. Then for some reason Amy's happy when she sees a picture of Beatrice. Wouldn't she just be sad? Eggman then taunts her, calling for a B-bot, acting like a bully. Why aren't they all called Buzz Bombers? Seriously! That's tone deaf for a show that supposedly listens to the fans, and makes the very occasional reference to them that I don't see a big deal in. Why would anyone be happy about this? I don't understand. Amy throws something and Beatrice happily catches her like a pet? I don't understand. Why didn't Eggman reprogram it to hate her? This episode makes no sense. The heroes defeat the robots, and Megabot blasts her and Beatrice out of the sky. And she doesn't die from the explosion because she has rings, I guess. She sounds stupid when she screams "wah" when running at Mechabot, which is something you'd expect out of Sonic X. And she starts smacking it with the hammer. But that looks like it didn't even make a dent in it. All it does is cause the gem to escape. When I saw this, I was immediately reminded of Amy's rampage against the robot in The Last Resort, but she was way more effective in the Sonic X episode. I thought she would like smash it to itty bitty pieces, but I guess the show is too low budget to show giant robots being steadily cracked until it's reduced to pieces. And the robot gets tied up with Tails' inner beam. Beatrice gets repaired immediately, and finally it's pink. And it's stronger than before because the gem packs a punch, so it knocks her over. Then she closes a scrapbook of her favorite scrapbook. It's actually worse that the story ends with Beatrice still being alive because it just creates a continuity error for the next episode. Why isn't it still functional and constantly with her in the next episodes? It can't be that Tails got tired of repairing Beatrice because he's supposed to be sweet and Amy's friend, and she'd never forgive him. This was a surprisingly touching episode about Amy adopting a Buzz Bomber as a pet. It showed off her idealism and compassion, which should be a very regular part of her character, and isn't. So it's like character derailment for a character who's defined by the opposite these days. You might be worried that an episode written by a character's voice actor would portray them as a creator's pet and get them wrong, but actually, Amy's actress got her perfectly. Better than any other episode in the show. Which is only surprising because this is the series where you learn to expect the worst. It was impressive that a mere voice actor wrote an episode for a change, but when it comes to logic, the writing was unimpressive. But that's still a compliment for the show, because what else is new? The episodes are always forced and plot hole riddled. What makes this episode any worse? So the episode managed to be on an equal level to the ones written by actual writers. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And here's where the episode has an advantage over the rest. Getting you to actually care. When it comes to genuine heart and emotion, it actually really works because this was the first time in a very long time where I actually felt sorry for Amy. It helps that she was just quietly sniffling and therefore crying like a real person would, instead of actually making over-exaggerated crying noises like Sonic X would have done, or going on a tantrum. Instead, she's actually realistically depressed when she loses her pet. And her friends act like actual friends trying to cheer her up. Considering the trivia about Cindy Robinson and her old pet I mentioned in the Fuzzy Puppies episode, it was predictable that the story she wrote just happened to involve Amy having a pet that she loses. And writing it so that it constantly gets brought back from the dead was probably therapeutic for her. But it just creates a plot hole in the end, because chances are, it won't be back in the episodes after this. So why? It would have made sense if we saw it get blown up and all of its pieces fell into the ocean, and its CPU was reduced to pieces. But instead we get a continuity error waiting to happen. We had a forgettable montage where she does stuff with the pet robot. She's told to put a leash on it at one point. I mean, it probably would have impact if it was like an actual pet where you could brush its hair and wash it and pet it. Why does a badnik need to still be functioning after the battle to be repaired by Tails? What she should have said was that the CPU is still intact enough that Tails could return it to the way it was before. While with the other robots that get destroyed, he wouldn't know how to put them back together. What are the chances that this is the first time this has ever happened? It's good that she's able to have compassion even for one of Eggman's robots. Like she sees it as a struggling animal and not just a machine to be destroyed. I would say that Tails would fit this role just as well because he's supposed to love machines as well as be idealistic. So it makes sense that he constantly agreed to repair it for her. This brings up the question of why Amy doesn't insist on Tails doing this for every robot he can and converting them to the hero's side. But again, not only do their CPUs need to be intact for that, but she wouldn't want more than one pet. She might, but it'd be too much for her, and she's a sentimental type to do this. So she would insist on having them be her pets, when she could easily just use them as an army. Which is what Techno did with the Nicenix. They fought off badniks on a regular basis to protect the zone, which was a way more useful application of the Nicenix concept. But not as sentimental as it should be since it is nice in the title. Okay, now let's get to why the writing was forced. First of all, there's no way he would have any kind of password making it tedious to get his own wrist gadget working. He always just used it with a single press of a button. Since when does he need a password? Let alone one that sucks so much that he'd never bother with it. Since when does he have any reason to be afraid of hackers to the point where he'd use a password on his own private personal device that never connects with anything but his robots? That just creates a continuity error because he never had to deal with this before, and will never have to deal with it again. It only happened to pad out the episode, because if the writing went with a predictable route, and Eggman got control of our features immediately, it would have made more sense. Except it wouldn't. Nothing could make that make sense. Tails got a hold of it, and presumably had to reprogram it to even want to be Amy's pet, when its only goal in life is to try to kill her. So how is Eggman even able to get Beatrice to come home in the first place? Obviously, the second thing Tails would do after reprogram it to be good is make it not respond to Eggman's homing thing anymore. Just use a jammer. What was he thinking? Eggman's constantly using his wrist thing to summon robots to his location, and he forgot about it? This would never happen. It's just the predictable twist I saw coming from the minute Amy befriended it. It would have actually made sense if it got damaged near Eggman without the heroes able to retrieve it, because then he'd be able to reprogram it back to his side. But then we wouldn't have had the overly saccharine, ultra-convenient nonsense where it shows it still loves Amy, despite being with the Peabots again. Huh? Eggman didn't program that out of it? So it's evil, but it's good? It would have made sense if it was just tricking Amy and it tried to fly into the ocean to drown her. But that wouldn't be lighthearted enough, apparently. Even if we have to say fuck logic in the process. That's also why it survives. And normally I commend the show for subverting the obvious plot twist where a character grows attached to something they find cute, and then have to lose it because of status quo, like Buster early on, and the baby robot from Sonic Underground. But apparently not Friendbot, because apparently it got sent to the Valley of Q-Bots. But this show has no continuity most of the time, because the writers are too lazy to watch the previous episodes. So this ending is unacceptable in a show that won't keep this change to the status quo anyways. So it would have made more sense in the long run if it just got destroyed over the ocean. And that's coming from someone who grew attached to it just like Amy did. It wouldn't have been easy to see, but it's something that they needed to write to explain his absence later. And they didn't. So I just have to assume that Eggman completely and utterly destroys it later. So basically nothing about the plot progression made sense. But at least it took until she lost the robot for the plot holes to happen, which is the middle of the episode. She did a way better job than Flynn, and she's not even a writer. Plot holes are unavoidable for Sonic, so I can forgive that, because when you actually manage to tug at my heartstrings, that's impressive. Because that's doing something that the vast majority of the episodes don't do.